Jesus was only minutes away from the greatest public miracle of his ministry. So why did the Son of God stop and weep? For a long time, I read this as simple sadness. But John actually gives us a strange detail right before this. He tells us Jesus loved his family, so he waited 2 extra days before going to them. That word "so" used to confuse me completely. Love them, so he waited? Studying it, I realized the delay and the tears are actually part of the same story, not 2 separate ones. So let's walk into that house in Bethany, because grief, timing, and love are all tangled together here in a way most people miss. Lazarus has been dead 4 days by the time Jesus arrives. That number isn't incidental. A later Jewish tradition, preserved in rabbinic writings, held that a person's soul lingered near the body for 3 days before departing for good. That tradition was recorded after this period and can't be assumed to represent every Jewish belief at the time, but it helps explain why the 4th day carried such weight. By then, decay had visibly begun, and death was considered fully, irreversibly final. And that's what makes John's earlier details so strange. Jesus already knew Lazarus was sick. He said plainly, before he ever moved, "This sickness will not end in death. It is for God's glory." And then he stayed exactly where he was for 2 more days, not because he didn't love them enough to rush, because he loved them enough to wait for something bigger than a healing. Martha meets him on the road with a line that echoes in anyone who's ever felt let down by God. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." That's the moment most of us actually live in. Not the miracle, but the wait before it, when it feels like God showed up too late to matter. Then Jesus arrives at the tomb, and John records something most translations soften. He sees Mary weeping, and the crowd weeping loudly around her, and something happens in him. Most English Bibles say he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled, but the Greek word John chooses, embrimaomai, carries the idea of deep emotional agitation, indignation, and even restrained anger, far stronger than simple sadness. Outside the New Testament, it's used to describe a horse snorting before a charge. Scholars have debated exactly why John used such a forceful word here. Some argue it reflects Jesus' genuine outrage at death itself, not at Mary, not at the mourners, but at the wreckage this enemy had made of a family he loved. Death was never part of how things were supposed to work, and Jesus is standing face to face with it. If catching details like this, a single Greek word changing how an entire scene reads, is something you want more of, that's exactly why this channel exists. Subscribing helps this reach someone who's read this story 100 times and never noticed it either. Then comes the shortest verse in the whole Bible. Jesus wept. But here's what almost nobody catches. The word used for his tears here isn't the same word used for the crowd's loud public wailing a few verses earlier. That word, dakrio, appears exactly once in the entire New Testament, right here. It describes quiet tears, not performance grief, private tears for a friend. So, within a few verses, John records 3 things happening in Jesus at once: anger at death, quiet personal grief for his friend, and a third layer easy to miss entirely. Jesus already understood the cost of what he was about to do. Raising Lazarus publicly would force a confrontation with the religious leaders that this gospel tells us directly accelerated the plot to kill him. Standing at Lazarus's tomb, in some sense, he was looking at his own. He knew resurrection was only moments away. Yet he still chose to enter fully into human sorrow. Martha asked for healing. Jesus gave resurrection. She asked him to come sooner. He chose to reveal something greater. Maybe you're standing in your own 4-day late situation right now, something that looks finished, decayed, past the points of fixing. This story doesn't promise the wait won't hurt. It promises the wait isn't the whole story. He wasn't just sad at that tomb. He was angry at death, he wept for his friend, and he already knew what it would cost him, and he did it anyway. The shortest verse in the Bible reveals one of its greatest truths. God is never indifferent to your pain. He stands before your tomb. He shares your tears. And when the time is right, he still calls life out of death. Does knowing Jesus delayed on purpose and grieved anyway, even with the miracle seconds away, make his tears feel more like comfort to you or more like a declaration of war on death? Which one hits you first? There's another place in the New Testament where this same kind of raw emotion shows up in Jesus over something that might surprise you. That's next. God bless you.